what she's saying is you said carry over. That you start anew every year and don't carry over those sit back like I said. So every year, if you didn't use the carryover, you had 11
Finance and Budget Committee is called to order. We'll have prayer and pledge by J.P. Sue Madison.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here tonight. We're grateful that we live in a peaceful community that lives in harmony. Help us to make wise decisions for this county and lead us as we go forward in the coming year. In the name of all that's holy, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does everybody have their agenda? Do I have any additions or deletions on the agenda? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to accept the agenda as printed, and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Agenda passes. Okay, treasurer's report.
Good evening, everybody. J.P. Harbison told me to be quick, so here goes. 4.1. Skip down to 2,000, the road department. Revenue's 1.5 million. Expenditures a little over $1 million. The reason they're ahead in revenue is the FEMA flood transfer. We did that last month. Let's see. Jail ran out of money mid-month in August. General helped them out with a $50,000 infusion, but then they got sales tax in and they ended the month with $489,000 in the bank. Bottom of the next page, we ended the month with $32.5 million in cash. 4.2, the 1 cent sales tax and the jail tax were down again, less than 1%, but still down for the year. For the year, we're up 2%, but that continues to go down. This month, probably in 10 days, we'll get the first internet sales tax distribution. So we'll see what that brings. I'm not sure. Let's see. 4.4, the road half-cent tax. It was up a little bit better too, 2.99. $142,000 came in, and that's $52,000 more than this time last year. 4.5, property taxes. Look at the shaded area down there through August. You can tell that 2019 is well above 2018, mainly because of the 4.4 millage instead of 3.9. And Nelson is sick tonight, so if you look at 5.1, I don't know what to tell you except it's doing well. Beginning balance was 3.1 and we ended 3,038,000. So doing well in employee insurance right now. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions? Okay, J.P. Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Hill, I've got some workers' comp questions, and I don't know whether you can answer them or not.
Probably not.
First question is, What is the frequency that the self-insured fund sets our rates?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, second question, how are we billed and how do we pay for our workers' comp insurance?
I mean, it's paid to the AAC.
I know who it's paid, what is the frequency?
I believe it's, what'd you say? Once a year. And then we get some back on a dividend.
Okay, my real question, and maybe Shannon can answer that. My real question is, when I'm looking at the proposed budget, and I look at a 6-month cost of workers' comp, does that truly represent a 6-month cost?
No, it's, the whole year is already in there. Because it's.
Hey,
Yeah, it's billed once a year in February, and we pay it then. So what you have there for the expenses through 6 months is the whole year's worth already.
so we pay it once a year.
Yes, but we don't know what the amount will be till the beginning of the next year. So when we budget for it, we're just kind of trying to guess what it will be, an educated guess.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Bobby Hill? If not, Shannon Worthen, our controller.
Okay, on 6.1 is our unappropriated reserve balance report. And the only changes during August were the 4 ordinances that were passed. And that decreased unappropriated reserves by about 48,000. And then in the lower right-hand corner, the net general fund after jail fund unappropriated reserves was about 3.2 million. And then 6.2 is the summary statement of expenses by fund and department. And the last column on the right is the amount that's actually been spent. And we should be at about 67% for through August. And over on page 12, the total for the general fund was at 65%. And then for all the other funds, special revenue funds, if you flip over to page 17, the total for the county was at 65.8%, so we're at about where we should be budget-wise for through August. That's all I had.
Are there any questions for Mr. Worthen? If not, thanks. We appreciate it. All right. We are ready for the ordinance change the title of kennel supervisor to kennel supervisor in the animal shelter budget for 219, and that's 7.1, and yes.
Since our attorney is at your side, would it be appropriate after last night if I made a motion to pass 7, 8, and 9 and put them on a consent agenda?
Yes, it would, except we need a change on the sheriff's patrol car, which is,
That wasn't on that
7, 8,
that
and
wasn't
9.
on that one? Oh, okay. So, okay, so we've got
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those of,
You got public comment?
oh, public comment. All right. All those in favor of putting these on the consent agenda and sending them on to quorum court, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, those are sent for the consent agenda.
Item 10.
So we're to item 10 now, an ordinance authorizing the county to do business with Southern Graphics. It's number 10. You want to read this, is this the first time? Yes.
We don't have to read it in the.
Okay. Who's related?
It should say,
Madam Chair, can I ask a couple questions?
All right, yes. Ava?
I was curious, since we have to declare that there are unusual circumstances, I was curious what the nature of the business of Southern Graphics is. It says they do printing needs, but there are a lot of printing companies in the area. So if someone could explain what are the unusual circumstances that suggest we should do business with someone who is a family member of a county employee?
Can you answer this? All right, our attorney will answer that question.
sorry, my understanding is that there was a short time limit or time period to get the programs and the printed materials for the CSU grand opening. And the normal people that the county uses to do printing could not do what it was that we needed done. A lot of it is, I think Office Depot charges by the hour for any kind of changes, and the program had to be designed and printed and gotten to us, I think, within like a 24-hour period. And so I don't think it really caught anybody's attention as to the fact that this could be a potential conflict, and I don't know 100% that this is, because technically an election commissioner is not a county employee. But nonetheless, out of an abundance of caution, because it was caught by the comptroller's office, they requested that we ask for an ordinance to do business in order to pay for those services for the programs, and I think it was just the programs. I'm not sure, something with whatever it was with the CSU.
So it's already been done?
It has already been done, yes. Every one of these that y'all have passed since I've been here have all been after-the-fact passages, even when you were finance chair, J.P. Madison.
Well, I'm not sure that was really called for, but I don't recall that at all. I think we need to waive conflicts ahead of time, not after the fact, so I can't support this in light of that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do we need public, okay, J.P. Pond?
I will be in support.
I will be in support of this. We just have many situations where we need not discriminate against relatives of employees or board members or that sort of thing when they can do the job for less money, less time, that sort of thing. They should be allowed to bid on these projects. I just hate for the taxpayers to have to pay more money for services so we don't look suspicious. And
Okay.
so, in taking a chance on looking suspicious, I'll be supporting this.
All right, thank you. J.P. Pond, J.P. Johnson?
I've done business in my business life where I'm spending my own money. These folks are the only printer in Northwest Arkansas I will use without getting a quote from them. They're always very, very reasonable, and very, very prompt. So again, I think that, and if there's a question that they're really not an employee, I think that we ought to pass this ordinance.
All right, thank you for your comments. J.P. Madison, Sue Madison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just how much money are we talking about?
The amount was.
Is this
I don't-
$200,000 or $20,000?
It's like $200 maybe.
All right, do I have a motion to pass this?
Second.
All right, any other comments? Judith? Yes.
Did we get any other quotes? Because I know it's hard getting printing last minute. It is expensive, and that's pretty. How many copies were there?
There were probably about 200 copies because we printed about 200 programs for the CSU, or maybe a little bit more than that, because that's what we anticipated the attendance to be. I don't really know. There wouldn't have been any quotes because it's such a small job. We typically don't do quotes or request those unless they're larger. We're getting close to that threshold where you have to bid and do all that. I was not part of this, so I don't know, but I don't know if there were any quotes or anything. I do know from talking that we did try to get this done with Office Depot, who does most of our printing for all of our stuff, and they could not do what was needed. That's about all I know of it.
I just know from personal experience that usually you have to go with someone you know to get printing done fast.
Okay.
And that's what has been my experience.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Mr. Chief of Staff?
I just talked with Shannon, Ms. Cargill's Chief of Staff. I just talked with Shannon. The bill is being held up on account of this action, so we haven't paid it. It's still pending. So, and it's a nominal bill, around $200.
All right, thank you for your comments. All right, is there any public comment on this? Okay, I believe I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
All right, motion carries. All right, we're ready for item number 11, which is okay. You speak to this, please?
Good evening, Rick Hoyt. I'm a major with Washington County Sheriff's Office. This first item that we've got is an appropriation ordinance that we want to, we've had 3 wrecked cars in the sheriff's side this year. All of them were totaled. The 3 wrecked vehicles. The first one was one officer's fault. The other 2 were the fault of other drivers. We had one that was demolished on the interstate. It was a Tahoe when a semi-truck hit it from the rear and knocked it into the bridge, and you may have seen it. We were very lucky that we didn't get anybody killed in that particular wreck. And the third vehicle was our fire marshal, our assistant fire marshal's pickup, who got hit head-on when another driver lost control and hit the front of their truck, causing their truck to go in the ditch and turn over. So it was a 2015 Dodge Ram with 71,000 miles, and we got $23,775 for that. The 2017 Tahoe that was demolished on the bridge only had 63,000 miles, and we received $43,655 in insurance proceeds from that. The first one that was our actual fault, it was an older vehicle. It was a 2012 Tahoe and had almost 120,000 miles, and we received $14,236. What we're asking the court to do is reappropriate that money, because that money has been put in the general fund. We need that money back so we can buy replacement vehicles. I was lucky earlier this year, police Tahoes are only built during a certain time, and then there's no more of them. And we were lucky enough to find one on a lot. And so because of this one that was demolished, we were short a vehicle. So we took our capital money, some of our capital money that was intended to buy other vehicles, and we grabbed that Tahoe up at the state bid price. But now I need that money back in my capital account so I can buy a replacement truck for the assistant fire marshal, and another car for the criminal investigation division, and another car for a vehicle that I'm actually driving that's got over 170,000 miles on it now, and it's got some issues. So $4,000 of the money we're asking to go into the computer and IT equipment account line item because our laptop was destroyed and the mount and so forth in that big wreck that I was telling you about. So that's what we're wanting to do. Take the money, from insurance and put it back so we can spend it.
Okay, J.P. Jenkins?
Hi, thank you for being here tonight. I want to say that I will support this ordinance. It's the money you put back in, you're wanting to take back out. But I'm just curious, what is a police Tahoe? What's the difference between a regular Tahoe and a police Tahoe?
Well, there's a lot of differences. Number one, the vehicle is speed rated by Chevrolet. That means it is rated to drive at a higher than normal speed and still maintain control. It has special handling characteristics. It is 1.5 inches lower to the ground in clearance so that it can negotiate better and not be as top-heavy than a standard Tahoe. It has increased cooling capacity. It has increased electrical capacity to run the electrical devices, the blue lights that we have. There's a lot of extra wires that come out from under the dash and under the hood. I don't know if this year's model had 2 batteries, but most cars only have 1 battery. I think our Tahoes have 2 batteries under the hood to meet these increased demands.
It's interesting, thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to pass? Yes, be put on the consent agenda. Okay. Do we have a second? Second, okay. Public comment. All right, seeing no public comment, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Okay, you have another item, Mr. Hoyt?
Yes. The next ordinance that we're asking you is to approve is appropriation ordinance. This is in the jail budget. Earlier this year, we had a 2016 Ram half-ton pickup that was totaled out. It had 36,000 miles. It was totaled out because another driver fell asleep early one morning and sideswiped and almost hit our person head-on, and it totaled out the pickup. We finally got the settlement. We haven't received the check, but the check's in the mail, like you've heard before. In fact, we need to amend this ordinance because at the time I said $25,370 or $270, but we were told today by the insurance company that the other driver only had the minimum $25,000 insurance, so that's all they're going to pay us. So we would ask that you amend this ordinance to $25,000, and we would like that put back in that jail line item 4005, which is a capital account, so that we can buy a replacement truck.
Move to pass 12.1 with the amendment.
Good, with the amendment. Yes, second. Is there any public comment? And on the consent agenda, good. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. All right, we have another jail ordinance. You want to handle that one too?
Well, this third one is not a jail ordinance, it's a line item transfer.
Oh, okay.
And I tried to put it in an ordinance, but our attorney told me it did not need to be in an ordinance. Earlier in 2019 or 2018, we budgeted 2 workstations to go into our communications division. They're called Vesta workstations. They're 911 workstations. We already have 5, but we needed 2 more to make our room complete. At the time when we upgraded that room, 911 did not have the funds, so we've got 2 workstations that are not fully operational. The communications and facility fund that we have gets money, from different revenues. It's not a general fund item. We budgeted $65,128 to purchase these 2 workstations. I said in my work information that I gave the quorum court last year during budget time, some of you weren't part of that process, but I said at that time, we might find when we get to the actual project that the money is in the wrong place, and that's what we found. So we're just asking to move the $65,128 over into a different budget, or not a budget line item, and we need to move it into the lease account, take it out of capital, and move it to the lease machinery and equipment line item. So it's no added money, we're just moving it. Because of budget controls, we can't do it on our own, that's why we came to you.
All right,
I move we grant the line item transfer request and put it on the consent agenda.
I have a second. All right, public comment? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, All right.
Thank you.
All right, now, we have budget discussion, and I want to present something and then present budget controls. I feel that we're in somewhat of a crisis in this county because we keep spending more money than we take in. With the budgets that came in, we're down to $1.6 million in unappropriated reserves. If we take the $2 million from the Sheriff's Department proposal in their budget, that puts us in the red. And we cannot budget hold back money. We cannot budget it. All right, I asked Mr. Worthing yesterday to work up a handout that you have, and what I'm proposing is, okay, first, we heard a proposal last night for salaries. Well, that money has already been budgeted in this budget. That $11 million carryover is in this budget. Yes, there may have been enough vacancies that were not filled in the year to give this raise, but that money's not there. It's been budgeted. So what I'm proposing is that we hire no new employees. If we do that, we cannot make exceptions. And no raises. And that includes the sheriff's step system. That brings us up to $3 million. I went on and left the $1.5 million in general fund for the sheriff's department, but I think we need to go on and move $1 million and leave them $559,000, and so that we have an unappropriated reserve of $4 million. I know that this is a bold and will be unpopular with, everybody will find some reason why it needs to be changed. But I feel that we have to make a stand. Roger Haney said we would get at this point when we reduced the millage by 0.5 of a mil several years ago. We are there. It is time to bring this budget under control. I know we have needs. I know that we have needs that are very important to people. But we are at a point that as a quorum court, we need to make a decision. We cannot go into bankruptcy. And they say, well, we've got the holdback. We cannot budget that holdback money. So it's out there for discussion. If you want to delay a decision on it and kind of go over the figures, and we can put this off for a vote until Thursday night, but I think we have a responsibility to let the elected officials know what we are doing, if this is the pleasure of the court. I know it's bold, and I know it will be unpopular, but at some point a decision has to be made. Yes, JP, Eva Madison.
Would you mind walking through the numbers on that again? Because I was having trouble following 2 million from the jail, and I assume you're referring to this page with the yellow.
Okay, the one that I just
Right, okay.
handed out to you.
So,
The original summary that came out
Okay.
in your book or on your laptop
right, that I have, okay.
is with 24 new positions.
Okay,
There were 24 new positions. There was no raise in that.
okay, so you're just saying that the budget requests for all the departments included 24 new
Positions.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you're saying, so when you say no new employees, that's what you mean? I was a little, at
New
first when you said it, I
positions.
thought you meant maybe a hiring freeze, which was very different. Okay.
No.
Okay,
No, well, for this year, it would be that we would not hire 24. We have been asked to fund 24 positions.
okay. So that, so the,
16 in the sheriff's department and 8,
because
one of-
I didn't see any in what was up for tonight, so that's why I'm
well,
off.
I'm just putting this out there, so when these people come in and present their budgets, if they have new hires and they want new positions, that we have made a decision one way or another, so that we don't start piecemealing and say, well, you know, maybe we ought to give someone 4 positions, or maybe we need to give them 8 positions.
Well, where are the other 8? There's 16 in the sheriff's office?
There are 2 prosecutors, 3, I believe, in public defender's office, and 1 Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
What was the 8?
Is that 8?
That's, there's 2 more. So 16 sheriff's office, 2 prosecutor, 3 public defender, 1 veterans.
What was the 8? You said 8 after the 16.
Well, maybe
Well,
there
she
was
was
just
breaking them
7.
down.
Maybe I miscounted because I've done these.
Okay, well, and then I wanted to ask, you said that the numbers last night included the raises? And I
No.
thought, okay, so the
No,
sheriff's,
what,
Okay.
okay, go on and.
the sheriff's
do your-
step plan is an ordinance. So if we're not gonna give those raises, we have to repeal that ordinance. Because that's automatic, that was the whole purpose of it.
Well, I
So-
think
I think we're gonna have a
as
lot
a
of,
degree of fairness, if we are going to freeze raises for this year, I think that everyone should suffer.
wow.
It's not pleasant, but we don't have the money. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little confused at the freezing of hiring positions when there has been talk about hoping to expand on the jail and get more beds. But if, in that plan, there would
This is-
have to be hiring.
Okay.
Right.
This is a completely different issue. We're doing the budget right now, and we don't have anything for expansion at this point in the jail.
I know, I'm just
Okay.
saying that was
But-
in the
and that
newspaper,
well,
and that would,
there's a lot
I'm
more
confused at-
information that should be there other than what was in the newspaper.
right, I'm just confused.
We're
at this.
working on a budget. And I understand if you've read your budget controls and budget book in the back, their rationale, if you read their rationale, it didn't have anything to do with the jail, basically. All right. Now, yes.
Could you just clarify for me, these numbers here where you're moving from the general fund down to the jail fund? Can you just walk through that one more time just so I can understand it a little bit better? You're just trying to cover the deficit in the jail fund? Is that my understanding correct, or?
No. Oh, yes. This is always an infusion, general fund infusion. It's the jail budget is always over what the 1 cent sales tax and other fees that they charge at the jail. So they usually are about $1 million short, and usually this infusion is the difference between the money they know they're over budget. So therefore, they put it in, it's used as it is needed. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, yes, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does this budget include any consideration for the return of cost from the cities that were talked about getting imposed?
No, it doesn't include, and this is another issue that we have to make a decision on.
I thought the decision already been made on that.
Okay,
It's waiting on the judge.
okay. I have really thought hard about this, and I supported the per capita at the beginning, but the more and more I think about it, this will open the floodgates to put people in jail.
I don't agree.
And it's a per capita. That means if they're paying so much money to have so many people in jail, then they're, if they stop someone and they just have some drug paraphernalia or something, and they're not impaired in any way, and they, if they want to give them a ticket, fine. But, in most cases, it's a felony, so they arrest them and take them to jail.
You know,
All right,
we've heard from-
okay. I think that we need to come back to Patrick Deacon's proposal. I think, yes, I think it puts more pressure on the cities to put people in jail that need to be in jail, because it puts more of the cost on them in that way than it does with this other proposal.
You know, I guess first thing is, we've already passed the ordinance. As passed.
No.
Oh, really? I thought,
We didn't pass it.
oh, my, that's right. Oh, don't think. Well, anyway.
And I
You know,
mean,
and I guess the thing, I've talked to a number of enforcement people, and those people are doing everything they can to divert people that don't need to be in jail.
well,
And, they're already participating in a very aggressive way to try to keep them over.
some of them are, that's true. But we've got a problem. We don't have any money.
The cities are willing to participate with us on this basis. I've talked to Springdale and Fayetteville representatives, and they're all on board to go ahead with this proposal. I asked them personally about supporting it. They said, yes, we're ready to go. And I think we need to get on with it because.
Well, that's up to the county judge, that's not up to this committee. Yes, J.P. Ecke. Oh, excuse me. Are you finished, J.P. Bowman?
I am concerned that we are going down the wrong rabbit hole at this juncture in the budget talks. If we want to talk about jail per diems and per capita revenue
that's true.
streams, we need to have that as the topic of discussion.
Okay,
and not
I agree with you.
so broad. But I will say this. The Constitution already states the responsibility that we as a county have and that municipalities have. And municipalities don't have a choice. It's been legislated that they are to fund the jail. So when we get there, they cannot just say, no, we're not going to do that, when Arkansas Code annotated 12-41-506 already says you will share the expenses of the jail. So we'll leave that for another time, but I think we need
because we
to
need to move on.
do that. Okay, thank you.
Because I don't want this meeting to go longer than 2 hours, because I think by then everybody's brain dead. All right, now, that was a proposal. Yes, J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As long as we're sort of ruminating about last year's budget and concern about funding, I'd just like to share some of my thoughts over the past 8-9 months. When my current term ends, I will have held elective office for 26 years. Over the years, I've had trusted colleagues and reliable staff. This quorum court has neither of those. Many justices of the peace that were returning this year were surprised to learn that we had given extraordinary raises to 50 of the judges' staff, some above the 3% COLA that we gave. According to the employee handbook, those raises should have gone to JSAP, should have gone to personnel, and ultimately to finance and budget. They were not. Our salary administration programs dictates that a raise shall not be above 5% within a 12-month period. One raise amounted to a 30% increase. Our salary consultant, who was at our side yesterday, was not involved in determining those raises. And we count on our staff to alert us when our protocols are not being followed. I surveyed many of the JPs from last term.
Point of order.
I'm not finished.
I know you're
And
not finished, but
at least 9.
this has already happened. We have no
I'm
control
talking about
over it.
money. At least 9 were not aware
Point
of the raises that were included. My advice as we
You can talk now. You can talk now.
budget items and take them home and study them carefully. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We don't need to be chasing rabbits that we have no control over. This has happened, and we need to move on, and we've got this year's budget. I'm going to be very careful in that nothing is put in a budget that you are not aware of, than that I'm not aware of. So, yes.
Were you aware of those raises from last year?
I was aware of the money that was on the final budget. I
Were
looked
you,
down
were you
and I
aware,
saw,
aware of the raises that were put on the budget last year that most of us were surprised by?
I only saw the total amount of money.
You knew about the raises before you voted on them?
No.
You didn't? You made the motion.
I made the motion to approve the budget.
So you didn't know about raises
I
that were in
knew
the
that
budget?
the money was in there to do raises. This
Well,
is the
I'll just say this.
excuse me,
No,
we're
I'll say
not
this.
going
I
to
have the
discuss
floor.
this.
I have the floor.
I-
Are you gonna
2 minutes.
you're gonna routinely take the floor away from JP's talking about
No, I'm
financial
not.
matters? You've done it once.
Okay, hold on,
Well,
stop. If the chair asks
When
you
the
to stop
chair
talking,
asks
then
for
you
your
must stop
advice.
talking.
Not
Okay,
what the
I answered your
parliamentarian
question.
asks.
I answered your question. I said I saw the total amount on the county judge's line item of $312,000 or whatever it was. I did see that. I did not know who was getting the raises.
Well, then
All right,
as
end of
chair-
discussion. Thank you.
Can I, Madam Chair, I have another question though.
Okay.
Are you going to promise to us as budget chair this year that you will not allow those kind of secrets to slip?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, do we want to wait until Thursday night I want y'all to look at this. I think it's a bold proposal, but I think it's something we need to do. And I hope you support it.
Can I actually raise a question about the budget
Yes.
control, since that's actually what's on?
Oh, okay. Well,
Is that okay?
just a minute. Let me say one thing, and then I'll let you have the floor. If we basically freeze the budgets and keep the budgets at the minimum, some of our elected officials and department heads should be able to change money in line items from one line item to another without having to come to the quorum court. And we raised that from $5,000 to $20,000. I think if we're going to say, we're not going to give you any new people, and we're not, we're holding this budget in control, that those elected officials should have the ability to move money from one line item to another. This does not include fuel or oil lubricants, doesn't include grants. Everything is the same except they can move up to, what, $20,000? Yeah, $20,000. So, is that right?
No, there's no limit.
20 per year in the general fund. Okay, all right. You have the floor, JP.
Thank you. My question is actually on the second page. The elected officials' pay, I've always been concerned about the wording here, because the way it's worded is that we're paying our elected officials a range, a percentage of a range, and the range that's set by the state has a minimum and a maximum, and the intent of that ordinance was to pay them at the maximum of that range. And so I think that item 6 needs to be reworded for the 1st through the 9th year to say that they'll be paid the specified percentage of the state maximum. Because I don't know how you pay. Well, you know, the state sets a minimum and a maximum. They say, so for the county, and I'm just going to throw out numbers. They say for the county judge in a Class 7 county, shall be paid a minimum of $80,000 or a maximum of $100,000. And so we were saying that for the first year of service, it should be 80% of the maximum, but instead it says 80% of the range, which is a difference. So that's a lot of different numbers. And so I've been concerned, I raised this in January, trying to fix it from last year, and nobody was concerned, but
So
I still
80% of
remain.
them, okay.
I think
I
the
will
range should be
consider-
the
okay.
maximum.
Okay. We'll consider this and bring it back to the quorum court at one of our other budget meetings. We need to, all right, are there any other questions? All right. I do need to make one statement, though. If we freeze the salaries, no increases this year, the elected officials, by state law, will get their raise. We do not have any control over that. So you need to be aware of that. Well, it may not be fair, but that's the way it is. All right, we need to move on. We have Becky Llewellyn. Okay. Any other questions on budget controls?
Well, can I
Okay.
What's
Sure.
the status of where we left budget controls? Because
Okay.
are we voting on them tonight, or?
I have a feeling that some of the people don't want to vote.
Okay.
Maybe they want to talk to different people. I'm leaving this because normally we do budget controls at the end.
Okay, I just want to make sure we
Yes.
didn't need to dispose of it.
Are there any way to separate the mandatory cost versus the arguing cost?
What are you
In
saying?
this budget, how much money in it is mandatory that we have to pay?
Oh, that's not the question.
Huh?
That's a hard question.
I know it's a tough question.
Well,
I mean, what
I-
percentage?
I
Because
don't know. There's not a percent. We have so much money that comes in from taxpayers that we can budget, and we have reserves, and we can't spend more than what we have. And we need to
well, why
keep-
through the year did you agree to pay several different things for 5 million, 8 million, 7 million? You're gonna have to budget to pay it.
Yes.
Okay,
because
so how you gonna freeze all
That's what the
this?
people on this horseshoe did. I may have voted for it, and I may
Not all
not
of them.
have. I don't know what you're talking. Thank you. What do we have to pay? We have to take care of the people of Washington County so that they're safe and, okay. End of, any other questions? We can discuss, okay. Becky, you're so lucky to be the first, okay? Oh, yeah. Yes. I have one more thing. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that listening to you go through what you feel like we need to do in order to keep the budget under control is great, but as a new justice of the peace, I definitely need more time to look through all of those figures and understand. So I hope that we move forward and can sit down together and work through those as my duty as a justice of the peace, I feel like.
Well, and I know we have a lot of new people, but I hope you go through these budgets before we
I've looked
hear
through the
the
budgets.
elected officials. I made a suggestion, or it's a bold suggestion or proposal. I want you to think about it, but I'm going to ask you to make a decision pretty quick on it of what we need to do. We could go on all
Okay,
night.
thank you.
Okay, Becky, this is our county treasurer. Oh, no, county clerk, county clerk. Hey, Bobby, sorry.
Give me your job. I don't want his job.
Okay, she has her budget.
I guess we're looking at the general fund budget. I am asking for slight increases for my overtime and my part-time salaries just because it's a presidential election year. I'm looking at 2016 numbers and then building in a small buffer for pay increases for employees and poll worker pay increases since that time frame.
Well, okay. Now, you have pay increases in that?
Well, they would have been paid less in 2016 than they are paid now. So I wanted to have a little bit of room in there for if someone's making overtime, their time and a half, of course, we're going to.
Okay, so how much are you over last year's budget?
I had 2,000 in my part-time salaries and my overtime, and I'm asking for 7,000.
$7,000, okay. And this is because of upcoming elections that you will need to hire additional people in your office to help with the election.
Yeah, I'll have overtime for my employees because we have to be here 8 to 6, Monday through Friday, and then we'll be here Saturday 10 to 4. I will say for the primary, Jennifer Price will bill Secretary of State's office, so we will get some of that money back from that.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
J.P. Madison.
I studied the county clerk's budget ahead of time, and it was apparent that the only change was on account of the presidential election, which is just a reality. And so, Madam Chair, I would move that we pass this budget for inclusion in the final budget and let our county clerk go about her business.
Okay. We have a motion. Any other discussion? And we have a second. All those in favor of accepting Becky's Llewellyn's county clerk's budget as stated, say aye. All those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you
very
very
much. Yes.
Mom wanted me to let you know, my father had back surgery this morning, so she had to leave early. She apologized for having to leave, but
Okay,
he's,
thank you.
he's a poor patient to begin with.
Okay.
Justice Sue Madison, not my mom.
Sorry.
Where's his budget? All right. Judge Wood has 15 departments. He will be presenting the budget for all 15 departments. So we'll let you start.
Good afternoon, or good evening. Third year now. It's been 3 years, and just driving back in from Craighead as we open up our CSU, the last CSU in the state, driving back in Washington County and just seeing how truly blessed we are in this county. And the discussion there was what's going on here in Washington County and how some of those JPs there look at what is going on here, and they're seeing this as a standard. And I was kind of taken back and saying, wow, even after the discussion that just happened here, there's still people who continue to look at Washington County and saying, this is what we're trying to emulate and aspire to. And I just shared this with you guys Friday when we were visiting with some Benton County folks who came down. My desire, my vision is that Washington County continue to be a beacon in the state, that others around the state is looking, whether it be JPs or judges, whether it be our road department or our animal shelter, that they're saying that this is the place. And yes, we'll have our oppositions and different ideologies and all, but at the end of the day, are we setting the example that others are looking to follow? So I'm pleased to be in my third session here with the budgets. I think J.P. Madison was the chair, and then we had Bill Usry, and now we have J.P. Harbison. J.P. Harbison sat down with the elected officials and the J.P.s and asked that we work towards having a flat budget this year, given some of the, obviously, pressures for the 2020 fiscal year, and again, without any raises, as she just kind of alluded to. I was going to be asking for, and I still will, depending on the pleasure of the court, but I will be asking for raises in JSAP next month for our Grants Department, General Services Department, Legal Department, and Veteran Services. But again, that will be in October, provided the position that the court takes. Attached, you guys have in your book the summary. I passed out another one, just wanted to make sure that the overall budget that you have, the summary here. Overall, the judge's budget has reduced their budget by almost 1%. We're right at about $117,000 down from last year. Again, from a historical perspective, for some of the JPs who are new, last year we were down 3%. In 2018 we were down 3.7%. So the challenge that our team continues to have is every year we turn around and say, what can we do to reduce our budget? And again, at the request of the chair, we would like to move the budgets down by 3%, and we've done that consistently for the past 2 years. And this year the request was at least can we come in flat, and we did. In fact, we reduced our budget by almost 1%. I want to thank the JPs who have visited our departments and took road trips and tours to better understand our employees and their businesses. Annually, again, we ask our JPs to visit with us to discuss not only our budgets, but also to discuss the overall county budget, also to understand where we should be heading as a future with this county. Again, we got census coming up. We see Benton County is growing. And so, yes, it's great that we're going through and looking at the lines, but we also need to be thinking about what is this county going to look like in 3, 5, and 10 years in our neighboring areas. And so that is a big piece. And so having you guys come in, I appreciate you guys coming in and discussing some of that. And finally, I want to thank our exec team and our departments for, again, their leadership in helping their teams to, again, go back to the trenches and examine your budgets to see how you can be more efficient and more effective. My department in particular is flat from last year, so we'll continue to remain flat. Building and grounds shows a small increase of $76,573 or 3.8% over last year. Given our work in debt service payment, as he talked last night in the energy program with Johnson Control, and again, our better focus to better be energy efficient as we work through our various buildings across the county. Significant work has been made this year and more to come in 2020. Planning is down 12.4% over last year, and again, reducing their budget by nearly $49,000, largely as staffing changes. We're going to be continuing to focus on improving our leadership there and the processes for applicants and neighbors. That's going to be our focus. We continue to work and see those challenges with our planning, whether it be in the planning department, the planning board, or here with the quorum court. And so we're really trying to get our arms around those process improvements for our applicants and our neighbors. Comptroller Finance is flat from last year. Again, they've made great strides in the department and continue to work on process improvements. They have new financial software coming in, as well as they continue to work with our auditors to, again, improve upon our processes. Information technology, IT, is also flat for 2020. IT has been diligent in managing their budget, meeting the needs of elected officials and departments across the county. General Services purchasing is down 9.3 over last year, again reducing their budget by nearly $18,898. Monitoring contracts, as well as seeking best buys and securing the best products and purchases for the county. Large part, there was some payments going from the road department and the jail department that the general fund was paying, and so we caught those and made the appropriate changes. So that was the savings there for the general services purchasing department. Archives is down 97%, and that's just a personnel change. The elected official, Kyle Sylvester, and I will be transitioning. Tony Wapple will be working and going into the circuit clerk's office, and so that will be a transition. So the dollars that pays for Tony Wapple will be going over to Cal Sylvester. So depending on how he lines that up in his particular budget, it can save the county money if he puts it in his automation, or it'll be the same dollars that was being allocated for Tony Wapple if he keeps them on his general fund side. We have been discussing this transfer for a couple of years, and making this transition now seems right. Archives will remain in the old historic courthouse. I've been visiting with the Historical Society and making sure that they know that the archives are there for the public. We will still continue to have them there for the public to go and do their research, as well as do any particular other work that they normally would do. But the records that Wapple has been doing, and largely he's been doing that mostly for Cal Sylvester, most of those records have now been digitized. And so having him over there to help transition is why this is appropriate at this time. Our grants department is flat, reducing their budget by only a few bucks. The county continues, again, benefit, though, from the work of the grant department, and since, again, we coming on board, there's been about $3 million a year brought into the grants department to help defray costs for the county, or budgets that we don't have to go because we have those grants coming in to, again, defray some of those costs. Human Resources requesting no changes, coming in flat with their budget. The team continues to improve their services, training, and leadership, developing their staff as well as employees around the county, while again seeking ways, working with Nelson Driver as well as Blair Johansson to improve our benefit offerings and manage those costs. The attorney's office, legal office, has reduced their budget by $3,400, about 1.5% decrease. The office consists of County Attorney Lester as well as a law clerk, managing a tremendous volume of calls and requests from both employees and the public. And again, continued review of that department to better meet the needs of the county will be the focus in the coming year. Road Department, our road department has also reduced their budget by $24,000, about 0.3% decrease. Again, working to attract employees and to retain others continue to be a focus as we work with HR to increase the retention of and getting some of the best employees that we have. Clearly, the largest part of my job is obviously making sure our infrastructure is taking care of roads and bridges, and having employees, attracting employees, and that's been a challenge. And we normally run vacant because we can't either the qualifications that they need they can't possess, or once they get them, they'll go and transfer somewhere else where they can make more money. So again, we're working with HR to come up with some different pieces, and I think they shared that last night. But again, really proud of what they've been doing, and this coming year, again, we'll continue to look at maybe some outsourcing of some of the major projects and make sure that our road team can maintain the maintenance routines out there, the regular regular process of grading roads and taking care of our bridges out there. The half-cent sales tax, again, the dedicated fund will ask and see a $125,000 increase. He may have talked about some of the equipment that we're looking at for some of the projects last night, but again, with that dedicated half cents coming in, that would pick up any cost for any capital expenditures. The animal shelter has also reduced their budget. They reduced their budget by 9.5% last year, coming in flat this year. Again, a reduction of about $1,000 decrease in their 2020 budget. Juvenile Detention Center has reduced their budget by $1,100 or 0.1%. And again, that's again one of those hard. It's like the jail. I mean, again, it's one of those places where it's, getting your staffing together. You have do 24 operation and taking care of young people and feeding them has always been a pressure point in trying to make sure you maintain a budget. But there again, we're able to get in there and find some ability to reduce their budget. We have our final interview tomorrow before we start making selections to get our JDC director replaced, or try to replace her. She was a dynamite. But again, the intention is whoever comes in, we want to make sure that they keep the focus of being the state leader that it is. And so that's going to be what we're going to have in the coming weeks in the JDC. But appreciate them working on to reducing their budget. Department of Emergency Management reduced their budget again by 1.1% or $3,400. Again, dedicated fund in their 911 projects about a $27,000 over last year's budget, but again, it's a dedicated fund that will come in, and so we'll see an uptick in their 911 fund there. The environmental budget came in flat. Continued education and partnership to reduce dump sites while encouraging good environmental stewardship. They've done a phenomenal job, and our partnership with Boston Mountain continues to do well. In fact, we probably had that last night, but again, some of the cleanups this year has just shown the tremendous support for what we're doing in our environmental aspects here in the county. And then finally, the Veterans Department. Our Veterans Department has a request, and they're the only, so Building and Grounds and Veterans were the only two that had an uptick in their budget. Veterans was looking at bringing on another veteran service officer to help with the number of veterans that we have in the county. We have about 12,400 veterans in the county, and we only have 2 veteran service officers to manage them, and it's a lot. And so and we can get volunteers. In fact, we're looking and working with some other organizations to help, but really all they can do is maintain and facilitate. Hey, glad you're here, what's some of the problems that you have, and capture that. But the real work is the veteran service officer, who is actually qualified, trained, who can go into the state system, go into the federal system to help those veterans get those benefits that they need and connect them to those benefits. And so that's what the request was, to have another veteran service officer to come on board in the Veterans Office. But I did share with our veteran service officer that if the court makes a decision to go and say there will be no new employees, then we're going to have to throttle back in how we take care of our veterans. We just will. We've been serving right at 200 veterans a month, and during peaks have been running at 250 veterans a month. And that's a lot of follow-up that has to happen when it's not just they come in and they're done. You come in, you take their information, you go in, you start doing the research, and you go back and forth and doing that. So anyway, that is the Veteran Service Department. Again, I submit our summary budget and walk through. You have all the information there, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, are there any questions from the court? All right, J.P. Pond.
I'm pleased with your budget. I did have a question. I'm curious, where did we get how do you get the number 12,400 for the number of veterans in the county? Where can we get that information?
I have to get that for you.
You can get,
Yep.
maybe I'm just curious. Don't kill me or anything.
No, sure, we'll get that for you.
But that's all right. Appreciate it.
Okay, J.P. Duncan?
So it looks like you're able to add the Veteran Services Officer while still reducing your total budget, right? So,
absolutely.
So that's self-funded. And so it seems like the plan right now, or the initial proposal, was to not allow any additional headcount.
That's right.
Well, I feel like if a department is able to self-fund headcount, to me, that makes sense to allow.
We don't have the money. That's the bottom line. I mean, we've got lots of people, lots of departments have reduced their budgets, including the sheriff's department. But the bottom line is, we have to get a hold of this budget. And yes, I would like for us to have a veterans person to help. But, the sheriff needs people. The prosecutor needs people. The public defender, all of these people need the positions they've asked for. So we can't, anyway, yes, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just a minute, I don't know
Go
if
ahead and finish.
J.P. Duncan was finished or not.
I did have one other question, because I guess maybe I'm not reading the form properly, but is revenue down versus prior year? Like total revenue projection?
No,
So
that was
if
what we
his-
spent. You got $1.6 million before we did the cuts, plus the jail infusion, and that put us in the red.
I'm talking about the jail infusion totally separate, but if revenue is same or better, and one of the departments is able to reduce their budget, I don't care what they do within that budget, as long as they're able to reduce the budget. So if every department can reduce their budget and revenue is higher, then it's all going to be okay.
but it's not. That's the problem. J.P. Johnson. Oh, wait a minute. J.P. Ecke comes before you. I'm sorry.
Sorry, E before J. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've always been a supporter of what Director Medina does down at the Veterans Services and have fought hard for him. He has gone long enough without the support of this court. And it all depends on how you look at the budget, with all due respect to our chairman, that there's going to be, 15 other, 30 other eyes looking at this budget. The way I see it, I do believe that we will have the funds available to support the request that are being made for his office, and I'm going to support those requests, and that's all there is to it. Thank you.
Thank you. J.P. Johnson. All right. J.P. Eva Madison.
I'm curious, J.P. Duncan was referencing, I think, the total of all the judges' departments. Is that right? Because if I look at Veterans Affairs, it's going up. I think are you referencing the total? I'm sorry,
Yeah, the total down.
Okay.
Down 117,000.
Well, Judge Wood, how much is it transferring to the circuit clerk's office to move the archives expense?
145,000.
I don't.
145.
So it's 145,000 that's being transferred to the circuit clerk's office?
Yes.
Because that effectively wipes out the savings right there. If you're down 117, but you're giving the circuit clerk 145, that seems like overall for the county, that's an increase.
No, so, let me see, where is it? We'll have 3,400 left in our budget. 140 will be going to circuit clerk. Now, you're right, so it's 145 no matter where you, provided if he keeps it in his, and again, when he has his budget meeting, will he keep it in his automation, or will he keep it in the general fund? If it's automation, then it'll come back.
Well, if he doesn't spend his automation fund, though, we get the extra.
That's
So
right.
it does hit the general fund.
That's
So
right.
I'm concerned with saying that there's a overall decrease when it sounds like we're just passing the increase off to another elected official.
Well,
That's my concern. And I don't think we voted on that. This was news to me. I just read it when I was getting ready for the meeting, that it said we would be presented with that ordinance in September.
What ordinance, I'm sorry?
The ordinance, because archives right now is one of your departments. It
That's
would have
right.
to have an ordinance to move it to the circuit clerk's office.
The archive's gonna stay, the personnel, so I don't know, the personnel has to go through or if we're doing that through an ordinance, I don't know if it.
Yeah.
Kyle, is that how we decided? It'll be through ordinance? Is that how we?
Yeah, an
Okay.
ordinance would have to be done to create a new, this would be a new position. It would be the
Okay.
elimination of one position and creating a new position. So an ordinance to create a position would have to be done.
Okay.
This is not anything new. We transferred the fire chief to the sheriff's department a few years back because it fit better in the sheriff's department, and that position is a part of his budget now. I think the point that J.P. Madison was making was that the 145,000 is really not a reduction, it's just a transfer, but I think it's a good transfer, it's a good fit, and the circuit clerk has additional fees that he can pay for that position, while the county judge doesn't, so, it's a neutral. Well,
Let's move them all to the circuit clerk then.
well, he's got money, that's for
I'm
sure.
an ordinance that we move all of the.
Okay,
I'm with you.
let's move on. J.P. Pond.
This discussion brought up another question, and, okay, we don't do any hiring,
Right.
but we're gonna be able to move from one line item to another. which
If we pass what I've suggested, yes.
Okay, but that doesn't mean you can take money from one of those other items and use it to hire part-time employees.
No.
Okay, because that's a different.
No, because
that's a-
if we say there's a freeze on hiring, no new positions.
No
which-
part-time.
Okay. We've got an election year, so we've got there's always exceptions to the rules because we have to have poll workers, and our county clerk will need some additional help during the election to handle the people coming in early vote and that kind of thing. So, and we passed that budget. That money is in her budget. Now, we're talking about brand-new positions. The Veterans Affair is a brand-new position. I agree with J.P. Duncan that he has enough money to cover it, but it's a matter of fairness. If we are going to tell one elected official they can't hire any new people, and then we turn around and let someone hire someone, it's just, to me, a matter of fairness. All right.
Thank you.
J.P. Duncan?
Do we as the court have to make that decision for the elected officials? I feel like we could just say, if you stay within your lane, so you have a set dollar amount, do what you need to do within that budget.
Well, that's...
So if the judge's budget is $17.68 million, then he has $17.68 million to do what he needs to do. I don't want to tell him he can't hire or he shouldn't hire or whatever. Like, if you need to hire,
How are
then
you
hire
going to
people.
reduce the budget?
Well, he's already reduced it. So you look at other,
But we're looking at the whole budget.
okay, well, then we'll have to look at each other elected officials' departments, and we'll look at that budget.
And we
you,
start picking and choosing.
it's not a pick and choose, it's you have a set amount, play within your sandbox. That's,
All right.
I mean, that's the way it makes sense. I don't want to do his job for him.
Okay, I don't either. J.P. Johnson.
It appears to me that we're trying to eat this elephant in one bite. I think we got to eat this elephant one bite at a time and go through these line items and look at the totals and look at the total revenue and then decide where we want to end up.
Well, okay. That's one opinion. All right. Yes.
And I wrote this down and meant to ask at the outset, what is the criteria for who's coming to us? Because I don't know that we ever settled on that.
Everybody is coming. Mike. Since we have many new JPs, I have asked everybody to come.
Okay,
Now,
I was just curious because I didn't see the logic and I wanted to make sure.
okay.
So we'll hear from
Well,
everybody.
at first, okay. Are there any other questions? J.P. Johnson.
I've been studying this book I was given. If we threw away the summary and changed all the numbers, that means none of this backup I've been studying is pertinent.
Yes, it is. All of it is pertinent, except for personnel. It's all pertinent except for new hires
Okay, I understand.
and raises. That's it.
Okay, I understand. I do budgets every day. And I have a detail and I take it to a general summary and I add it up and all the numbers got to add. And the way we're going about this, I don't think it's going to work.
Well, we're in the hole. So we can either dig the hole deeper or we can get out of the hole. All right. Thank you. Are there other questions? Okay. J.P. Jens.
J.P. Deakins, our expert accountant.
Who?
J.P. Deakins. What do you recommend?
No pressure.
We need to look at this. You want to wait till Thursday?
I think we need to start by having an overall target of where we want to be. We need to understand what the revenues are. We need to understand how much we want to hold back, and we need to understand how much we want our reserves to be at the end of next year. Then we back into all these budgets. I can really understand Chairman Harbison's approach to this, but I can also understand, I appreciate Judge Wood and his budgets over the last several years, even before we were on the court. How can I take away the incentivization for somebody to find efficiencies into their departments if that requires a new hire or the equivalent? I mean, I understand the minutia of this. I could do this budget in one night. We know what the revenue is. We know what we want to hold back. We divide that pie up and give it to the elected officials, and you make the choices for your department, and you be accountable to the people. That's my goal. I don't know if that answered your question, but
On that theme, I too can understand where JP Harbison is coming from, because she's been for the past several weeks down in the weeds of this, meeting with individuals. And so instead of starting from the big picture, she's been in the background and is working her way forward. And I know what JP Duncan's questions were kind of going at is, are we seeing a decrease in revenue? What's prompting this, desire, the sentiment that the sky is falling? And for a long time now, we've been spending more than we take in new revenue. And so do we have money in reserves that we can use to offset that? Yes, and that's what we've been doing for the past several years. So do we have money to fund a budget? Yes, we do. But we're using up our reserves. And so many times in this budget process, we've had a discussion of how much money do we want to be in our reserves? And we debate, is it 4, is it 6, is it 8? At one point, and JP Pond and JP Harbison remember, it was like $19 million. It was a lot of money. And that's when we reduced the millage, because we thought we're sitting on too much of the taxpayers' money. But what we didn't realize was that we were still spending, because when our treasurer gives us our money, he projects. So when you see that $11 million carryover, that includes our savings. And so I always look at it and say, what's new revenue that we can spend, because we have a mandatory 10% holdback. So the treasurer should give us a prediction for new revenue, which is not readily apparent from the revenue documents we get. It's not his fault, it's just the way his forms are. But I always say, what's new revenue, what is the request for expenditures, and what's the difference? For several years now, that has been a several $million-dollar gap. That's what JP Harbison is trying to address. That's the hole she's trying to get us out of. We need every department to try to cut, and just because one is cutting doesn't offset another, because ultimately we have to cut or we have to raise taxes. There's really no way around it. Now, hopefully the internet sales tax will give us a little bit of relief, but I don't know that I think that, it's going to solve all our woes. We also have the 2020 census looming on the horizon, where we're going to absolutely see a reduction in the share of what Washington County is getting from the 1-cent sales tax. So she's trying to cut that off. So if we look at the minutia all day long, we're probably going to agree with every person that sits at this podium and say, that sounds good, we think you've done a good job. But at the end, we're going to have a budget that's $4 or $5 million over new revenue. That's what we can't do. That's what she's trying to get us out of. I agree with JP Deakins and JP Johnson. We need to step back and decide what the big picture is. We have always had trouble doing that, because we can never settle on, do we want 4? Do we want 6? Do we want 8 in reserves? What is the magic number? Because saying no to the people at this podium is very hard. So I think we all need to study the details and decide what our priorities are. What JP Lemming was asking, what do we have to pay for? You start looking at what we have to pay for and what we don't have to pay for. We could save a whole lot of money if we cut out what we don't have to pay for. But you start telling the people from 4-H and from the health department and from all those places that we fund, no, we don't have to fund you, so we're not going to. That's hard. So she's trying to get us there. I admire her for doing it. It's not an easy job, but we're going to have to come up with a plan as a group for how we're going to cut off this deficit, because we can't head into the 2020 census or we will go bankrupt.
I just want to make one point. I want everyone to look at the budget. I want you to decide what we need for carryover. Do we need the $4 million that I'm suggesting? Because that's what I've done. I sat and I've talked with Chief Gales and Judge Wood, and I've told them that I think we need $4 million.
In reserve.
In reserves. 4 years ago, it was $6 million. To have $6 million reserve now would be really going in and taking money away from elected officials to do that. Basically, what I'm saying is freeze your budget. Let's dig in. Let's all of us dig in and try to meet this $4 million balance reserve. If someone has a better idea to do it, to reduce the departments, come forward with it. Yes, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I came on this court several years ago, and I began to talk about, I think our government needs to be more efficient. We need to keep looking for efficiencies. And, you know, I've been one of those people that's pushed back against tax increases. And I continue to ask for reductions in these department costs. And, you know, the one thing I can say is, during my tenure on this court, we have put pressure on all kinds of departments in this county to reduce costs. And, you know, one thing that occurs to me during this conversation, I've always heard that necessity is the mother of invention. We're there. We're to the point now, necessity is going to force us to do some things we don't want to do. And, you know, one of those things that we're going to have to consider is where we want to go ahead and bump up the tax, our property taxes. And you know what? I hate the idea of that. I hate the idea of a sales tax to build a jail and all these other things. We are at a point that we've got to make some serious decisions. Necessity is knocking on our door. And so I'm saying I applaud the progress we've made in the past 5 or 6 years to improve efficiencies in these departments. But we have seen some, and we're asking for more. We have got to become more efficient. Businesses around us are thriving because they're efficient, and our government's got to become more efficient. So thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you for your comments. J.P. Deacons?
This is kind of in reaction to, I think, the point J.P. Duncan was making, and I want to say this to my colleagues, the new colleagues on the court. If the obvious hasn't struck you yet, we're being asked to fix the problem that's been a problem for years before we got here, i.e. jail overcrowding, i.e. every other thing that we face on this. So put your boots on, buckle your seatbelt, because it's going to be a bumpy ride over the next few months.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, J.P. Ecke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I made a I inquired about from our comptroller, Mr. Wortham, and I made a suggestion, and it's good to see that you're still here and you haven't dropped dead of a heart attack. So, they said if I recommended this or asked this of our treasurer, he might drop dead of a heart attack. And I don't think so, because he's got 3 more years before he retires, and he's looking forward to retirement. So.
6 years.
6 years. There you go. Sorry. We, as a county, are legislated by the Constitution to have a 90% rule, which is 10% turned back every year to pay for whatever encumbrances come up for the following year. We are supposed to fund the services and the departments that need funding. That is what we're supposed to do. We do that and we legislate it through ordinance, and we appropriate because we are the fiduciary body. I agree with my colleague J.P. Johnson. I work with budgets also, and we're looking at this in two different ways. Yes, some go half full, some half empty. But the 90% rule, I believe, was set aside going back to, 1890, that the quorum court shall specify the amount appropriations for each purposes in the dollars and cents and total amount appropriations for all county purposes for that year. And it's not to exceed 90% of the revenues coming in. And that's because sometimes the revenue projections from the treasurer could be off a bit. Something might happen and all of a sudden revenue's not going to be coming in. So that's to protect you. If we were to use that 10% as a starting point of that is going to be our revenue. Don't even put it in the budget. Don't even put it in the projections. You can't use it because that is what we are going to use for our revenues. If we were to do that, anywhere from $4 million to $11 million is what we would have in reserves immediately. But because it's put in the projected revenues for the next year's budget, it's not realized. We need to go about this in a different way. We need to look at new ideas and new templates. Having that, just imagine if it's $11 million and it stays there. In 2 years, you'll have $22 million. We can start doing capital outlay and improvements for JDC, $1.5 million for building improvements. We will have the money to improve this county because we used our dollars wisely. Just don't put it in projected revenues. It's not a part of the budget. That's going to be our reserves. And if we protect it, and we have the reports that we really need to look at saying, okay, perhaps we do need to work with the treasurer saying, the information you're giving me doesn't do me any good. I need to know this is how much of the pie that I have and how much are you asking to slice out of it every month that new requests come in. Now, at the beginning of the year, I am not in favor for personnel positions and increases, because I thought that's just what we just now covered it in the budget, and now you're asking for more. We need personnel to operate the county, and that's what taxes are for, so that way the county can operate. I'm a lot more optimistic about this budget, and I think there is money available, and I know that we can find the solution. But right now, I believe that we need to use the turnbacks wisely for our carryovers, sorry, not turnbacks, carryovers, holdbacks, turn back the money, the 10%. I'm sorry, I just use different definitions in different businesses, and sometimes it gets crossed up. But we need to start looking at the budget in a different way. I appreciate and I value the input that our chairman has, previous chairmans, and other members around this court. But I do believe we do have money. I don't think it's as bad as it is. We just need to look for it, look at our grants, look at automation funds, what can, what can't, and find the solution. Off my soapbox. Have a good evening.
I have a question for Bobby Hill. If we take $11 million out of this budget and say it doesn't exist, that's basically what you're saying.
Well, it does exist. It is our reserves to be
So
used for.
Okay, we take it out. I'm only doing $4 million. 2.6 million is all I'm doing. And you want to, all right.
Well, whatever the beginning of the turnbacks was.
On your projected revenue, if we take 11 million out, how much money do we have?
In general fund,
Yes,
29.9 million.
29. New revenue? What are the expenses out of the general revenue?
On this, it says 32.8.
So we had 29, if we just had,
Then your holdback would be a couple million, so
so,
27 million that you would have for new revenue minus the holdback.
okay, so we'd have 27, and we've got expenses, and does this include the old budget or the proposed new budget?
This is the.
I think we need to
2020
look
budget.
at this and have it on a spreadsheet so we can look at it.
That's the summary.
Yeah, the summary, I mean, that's what I've used here on the summary.
That does not include the jail money that would go in.
Okay, I will work on this and we'll have this Thursday night to look at, and we'll have, holding out $11 million in reserve.
Well, let's just look at ideas. You know, let's just be able to entertain ideas and thoughts and,
Well, we need to know if the idea is,
well, if it's feasible, it
Feasible.
is. If it's not feasible, then it's not feasible.
Okay.
But we have to come up with new ideas facing new problems. Thank you.
all right, thank you. J.P. Lemming.
Is there any way possible that we could have like a 10-year average of what we really used on what you're saying as a reserve?
Okay, let me just
Let me
make,
ask this question. Was the budget 88 million last year and we could spend 66 million and keep 10%? Was that sort of the way it was?
Sorta, I couldn't.
So it was
I'd have to
10% last year, so it's been 10%.
Well, 10% holdback is different than the carryover.
Right.
So
Carryover.
whatever you got to take 10%.
Yeah, that's all they allow you to spend up to.
Carryover is what you bring in from the prior year.
prior year.
Okay.
Okay,
So what we carry over from 19 to 20.
Yeah, I mean, it's always best to only use new revenue, but right now, that's probably not feasible, but yes, that would be the best way to do it.
J.P. Johnson?
Is it not true that the carryover number is the sum of the holdback plus the unappropriated reserve for that line item?
If this budget played out 100% correct, that would be what was left.
But there's about 10% normally that come from, there's been a 10% carryover from all of the departments that goes in that carryover. I mean, that's historically.
Yes, ma'am. I understand that. And again, I want to say the $11 million is the sum of the legal holdback plus the unappropriated reserve for that line item. And I think that's correct, isn't it, Bobby?
Yes,
Plus-
if you're going just by these budget numbers, if they all come in just like we all say,
Well,
that's
and I
what it
mean,
would be.
We've got to assume that at least, or else we're not budgeting very well.
But I mean, like, last year's unappropriated reserve was 3.8 or something. And we had 11.3 to close the year out. I mean, so,
I was incorrect. It's the sum of three numbers.
Yes.
It's the sum of the holdback, the unappropriated reserve, and whatever that department came in under budget. That's
Correct.
the three numbers
That's
that
what
make up
that was correct.
the projected carryover.
I mean, my revenues are higher than I say, then
And your
it's gonna
revenues
be.
are, yeah.
And hopefully, my revenue's gonna be higher, the expenditures are gonna be lower
See if
than
you
what
got it.
the budget says, and that's
Okay. Let's see.
that's how we're surviving lately. So,
So you didn't have a heart attack?
Okay.
yet.
Thank you.
Well, anyway, those are suggestions. Any other
Oh,
suggestions?
can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
First off, the state mandates elected officials, minimum, maximum, that's all they mandate. Quorum court sets it, so.
Oh, on
We
salaries
don't
for
automatically
elected
get raises
officials? Is
unless
that what
all-
you're talking
Well,
about?
say we do. I wanted to clear that up.
Okay.
And,
So,
and when you said also for clarification, that infusion to the jail, you say we're going to go in the red. That unappropriated reserve number does count that, so. we're not going in the
Could you
red on
explain
this.
that a little
I
bit
don't,
better?
well, I talked with,
Explain that a little bit better.
I talked with, Controller Worthing, and he didn't think it was in there.
Yeah, it's requested budgets. And once you add that, you subtract the general fund infusion, and you get 1.6 million.
So that other $2 million is
It is
in
accounted
that,
for.
is in that 1.6. Okay, but that's still very, very low.
It is low, but I just want to make sure we
Oh,
we knew that
okay,
it
well,
was not going to be in the
that
red.
was a misunderstanding because that was, I asked if it was in there and they thought it was not, so that's where that came from, so. All right, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been concerned about the amount of money laying around in automation funds for some time. And I contacted the Association of Counties offices today and asked for some guidelines on that. And what I found is there's some legislative limits on our authority to touch
Yeah.
those.
There it is.
You know, I guess one of the biggest one is the collector's office. And so, you know, I felt like that we've had a lot of excessive funds laying around those accounts for some time. But legislatively, they have some protection with those funds, and we don't have a lot of authority on that. And I don't know what the solution is unless we just get cooperation from those people.
Well, yeah, I
regulate
also
those funds.
called and that was the same information. Okay.
One more.
Let's kind of wrap this up.
I think our collector, Angela Wood, does a tremendous job, and her budget is down. But according to the AAC 21-6-305, that her automated fund can be used for her, and it has in quotes, to operate the office of the county collector and for administrative costs. Administrative costs is defined as overhead. Now, in 2003, the amendment to that, any legal expenditures of the collector's office, this is not a fund that can be moved into general fund. However, the request for other services and any kind of administrative expenses can be paid for out of her automated fund if we so choose. So I just would, and that's right out of what the Constitution guidelines say for her office. But we cannot ask her to move it into the general fund like the circuit clerk.
Okay.
So, if you
Are there
want, you
any
can
other
already reduce
comments?
that, you know. There you go.
I want everybody to look and think about the information that you received tonight, because I think we need to make a decision on how much carryover we want. That's a decision, because then we have to reduce from that. To be at the $4 million, we have to, no raises, no new personnel, and that puts us there. So, if you've got better ideas, or you think we need to lower that, then, talk with the elected officials, try to learn as much as you can before you get here of what can be done and what cannot be done. All right. We're almost at our 2-hour point. Do I have to have public comment?
Before the end of the meeting, you do.
All right, you have a comment to make, Judge
What happened to the budget?
Wood?
Defending.
Oh, okay. You're not, you weren't finished, okay.
My last point is, depending on where you guys go, obviously, that's the budget that we're submitting, and if the recommendation is to go ahead and take the veterans out for now, then I would submit that budget to be submitted into the regular budget.
We need to vote on your
And then if you
budget.
guys decide that we can, I'll take that one to JSAP, and we can.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the judge's budget without the Veterans Affairs?
Can we be more specific which budget?
can we enumerate which budgets from the?
All 15.
Okay,
I think
all
we should
15, I
sever
mean,
that.
we are approving all 15 budgets.
Okay, well, I think they should be severed, but I also think, given our discussion, that it's perhaps a bit premature to vote on a budgets that size.
Well,
So-
we voted on the county clerks, and always, if there's additional questions later before we vote on the final budget, those questions can be brought up. But, you know, so I have a motion to approve the county judge's budget. Was there a second? Well, yes. No,
Without the veterans,
without the veterans.
until you guys make your call.
All right. Did you second? Okay, okay. J.P. Pond made the motion. J.P. Johnson is the second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Motion passed. All right.
Minute period, 3 minutes per person.
All right, we have public comment, 12 minutes, 3 minutes a person. Is there anyone that wants to make public comment? Please come forward and give your name and address. 3 minutes for comments.
Richard Tiffany.
Turn the mic.
Push the button in the middle. It looks like a little person.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm Richard Tiffany. I live at 105 North Willow, just down the hill in Fayetteville here. I wanted to comment about a little bit of history. There's a dress code sign on the front door that was put up by a Sheriff's Deputy Miller 6 or 8 years ago, specifically to keep me out of the courthouse. I have a disability that makes it difficult for me to wear shoes. The Officer Miller is no longer an employee for the Sheriff's Department as far as I know. In the June jail committee meeting, Judge Wood told me that I was not allowed to come into the meeting. I gave him a letter of disability, which I didn't have at the time the sign went up. And I've talked to him a couple times since then, and he insists that the dress code takes precedence over federal law about discrimination against people with a disability. Tonight, talking with the county attorney, he said that the disability law doesn't apply, it only applies to employees incorrectly. And I think that y'all should be aware that there's discrimination going on, and I'd appreciate it if you would remove the no shoes sign on the front door and let Judge Wood and the judge know that that people with disabilities shouldn't be discriminated against. Any questions?
We don't, I mean, you're allowed to make your presentation, and we appreciate your comments, and thank you for coming.
All right, thank you much.
Please give your name and address. It's not on.
Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and you guys have a really hard job, and I agree with some of the comments that JP Deacons made, that it's going to be a bumpy ride, and so I don't envy the position that you're in, but just some additional feedback to add to the discussion as you guys are considering things. I wondered where the savings are from Johnson Controls. There's been a lot of talk about the investment that we're making with that partnership, and so I'm really interested. There were some comments made by the Buildings and Grounds folks last night that said some of those savings were going to go towards the jail, but we know the jail didn't actually participate, so I just don't know where, in the details, we actually are seeing those savings and where they're reflecting. I haven't heard that come up anywhere, so I don't know how large they are potentially. And then I did want to go back to kind of the process that we were talking about. I mean, I have a business background, and I used to look at budgets, and it's really frustrating to look at this top line summary and then try to get to the nitty gritty details. So I like the approach that I was hearing JP Johnson talking about, where we would start with a little more detail and we take our time and roll up. That's probably going to mean in the future that we need to start a little earlier on the budget process. So I just want to be thinking about, you guys have a lot of those questions that would probably be answered. We could get into the nitty gritty of those things, and then it would make more sense as we rolled up into these bigger areas. And then I really want to focus on grants. I asked some questions last night and I didn't get any answers to my questions, and I was a little frustrated about that, so I hope we'll really have some more robust conversation around grants. There are a lot of things going on in our county that nationwide there are trends that there are actually a lot of grant monies from Department of Justice and some of those other areas. We have a dedicated grant person, and I know they probably do a great job. I don't know about them and their background, and that's not my background. However, I will just say that I know that we're constantly looking for monies, and there are funding sources out there sometimes for some of the projects that we want to look at, especially around like restorative justice. And so there were like 20 grants that were mentioned. So I would ask how many of those are ongoing that we get every year, how many of those are new, and then are there certain subject matters that we're starting to say, hey, let's dig into these. Let's look at criminal justice. Let's look at housing or veterans. I'm like, how are we cutting into that pie as part of our discussion about our budget ongoing? And then also, lost my train of thought. God, there's one other thing I was going to say. I forgot it, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment? Your name, please?
Beth Coger, Fayetteville. I came in late. I had an opening in Springdale that I had to go to, but I gather that you're talking about not funding the public defender with the extra attorneys that they asked for?
We're not funding, I can't comment.
I know. I never get answers. That's the problem. Anyway, I think that if that's what I heard correctly, and I think that's a big mistake because a lot of our restorative justice that we're working on, they need those extra public defenders, and they need the extra prosecutors too. And so it's going to really hurt our work that we've been doing to decrease the jail overcrowding if we don't have those. So I wish you'd consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't expect an answer.
Any other comments? I have not, yes.
We adjourn?
Do I have a second? We are adjourned. I will see all of you Thursday evening at 6.